Let's welcome on board then Mark Mobius, partner at Mobius Capital Partners, who joins us on the show. Mark, good to have you on board. I'd say after a Dhimaka Diwali, you think that the markets are all set for a Merry Christmas. What's the outlook on where India currently stands?
Well, I think that's correct. I think we're going to have a good Christmas. But you must remember, in a bull market, there always are corrections. So you have to be ready for those corrections. But at the end of the day, India's in such good shape, such great companies. There's no question that things will continue the way they are and the market will go higher in the long run with corrections along the way. I'm now in Goa, but I've been to 6 Indian cities in the last 4 weeks, and it's been quite revealing to me as to how great the infrastructure building is going on and the incredible vitality of this nation. I think India is going to go from strength to strength.
Sure, Mark. Hi, this is Anish also joining the conversation. Just wanted to get a sense from you. Does India then stack up as your best trade right now?
Yes, well, you've seen the companies that we have now, and those are the ones that we're holding on to, and they're in good shape. And I think going forward, you'll see a lot of other good companies coming in. It's really interesting that in India, the number of companies with a high return on capital is quite remarkable compared to other countries, which speaks well for the entrepreneurial spirit here in India and also the diligence of the management of companies here in India.
So the last time I remember, Mark, the list of your portfolio included APL Apollo Tubes, Metropolis, Dreamfolk, CE Infosystems, Persistent. Anything that you've added, subtracted?
No, actually, the only one we've added would be Dreamfolks. As you know, if you fly at all, you know that all of the lounges are completely packed, and Dreamfolks is involved in that, but you have that on your list.
Yes, indeed. We do have that on our list among some of the others as well, including the likes of a Persistent System. So just wanted to get in your thoughts on how things have been shaping up within the IT space, because it would seem that when it comes to the earnings, a growth for some of the large cap IT names, it wasn't quite as promising. What have you made of the earnings gone by within the IT space, and what is it that you're expecting in terms of performance from IT?
Well, IT generally is going to go stronger in India because of the greater and greater need for the US and Europe and other countries around the world for diversification away from China. Of course, India already is so strong in the software business, so that will continue. But I think the hardware is where India will begin to shine. So it's going to be very interesting to see how many companies in the hardware sector, that is semiconductor hardware sector, are listed in India. Not yet, but it's going to come, and that will be very interesting.
A lot of chatter around here in India as to how, with the upcoming elections in 2024 and the currently ongoing state elections, there could be a big fillip to the capex theme. When you were last here in India, in Mumbai, you must have already seen the level of infrastructure and development which is currently taking place. Just wanted to understand whether this is a theme that interests you.
Yes, but generally speaking, we found around the world, not only in India, but in other countries around the world, the construction sector is very difficult. There are lots of uneventful kind of things that take place that in the construction sector, which is not predictable, let's put it that way. So we prefer to stay away from the construction sector generally, except for companies that do supplies for the construction sector. And Apollo Tubes would be a good example of that.
The other thing, or rather the other tectonic shift which is currently taking place world over is the move towards cleaner and greener fuel. Anything within the energy transition sector within India, which is still at a very, very small and nascent stage, that you like, or at least keeping your eyes closed on?
Well, as you know, the whole area of new energy, whether it be solar, whether it be wind, is growing globally and has become very diversified around the world. The problem is that with the Chinese competition driving down prices in solar and also even in wind, it's become more and more difficult for people to make a lot of money in that sector and to maintain high profitability. So you have that in addition to the fact of government regulation. When you have government regulation, of course, then you've got problems. It's nice if you want a steady dividend income, that may work, but we want growth in the actual share prices. So we prefer to stay away from this whole area of power.
You said India remains one of the top markets, one of the fastest growing economies, but the FII flows have been missing. In fact, we have been seeing consistent outflows this year. What do you think is the impediment for the foreign flows to come into India? Are there other markets which are attractive? Is valuation something that keeps them away, or they're just waiting for this election overhang to go away? Your sense?
Well, it's all about interest rates. You must remember at 5%, if somebody can put their money in the bank and get 5%, it's difficult to put more money into India or, for that matter, any other market. So there's a great sucking sound that's taking place around the world. And of course, there's also a retreat to the dollar. The US dollar is so strong against currencies around the world. But this is temporary. I don't think this will last. Interest rates will come down eventually, and you'll see money coming back in.
Also, Mark, have to get a perspective in considering the correlation of world equity markets, not just India, with what's happening with the yield. Since what you just said about, interest rates, you think 4.5 to what the US 10-year yield has now settled in at could very well be the new normal? Do you see some stability kicking in there?
I think interest rates will eventually come down along with inflation. As you know, inflation is coming down. And as I said in the past, we saw that coming because money supply has come down dramatically. So that combined with the general growth in India will mean that money will continue to come in to India. There'll be respites like we've seen recently where interest rates are too high and draw money out. But generally speaking, you'll see money come back in to India.
And in fact, Mark, wanted to get a sense from you. Globally, what's the best tactical trade right now in terms of portfolio, in terms of various asset classes, various countries? What would you call the best tactical trade right now?
Right now, of course, with the interest rates where they are now, it would be a good idea for investors to put money into the bank and get that high rate of return, but keep at least half of their assets into equities. And I always recommend that, of course, India's, in my view, the best, if not one of the best markets in which to be invested, but you have to be globally diversified. So you might want to put money into Taiwan, into other markets around the world where we see very good value.
It is intriguing, Mark, because I was just going at the geographical breakdown as to what is it that you like most. And it's Taiwan which is actually topping the list right now with a slide over 22% exposure. It's next India and then South Korea. I'm guessing if it's Taiwan, it's the entire tech semiconductor play which interests you. And you think that's that one key commodity to bet on.
Yeah, well, that's right. The semiconductor industry is going from strength to strength, as you know. China is now branching out to compete with the US. And Taiwan is a big supplier. A lot of people don't realize this, a big supplier to China. China and India have, of course, semiconductor requirements, the biggest countries in the world. And Taiwan is a big source of these components. So going forward, I think Taiwan will continue to be very strong. And of course, as we get into AI, the demand for very sophisticated semiconductors will increase, not decrease.
Interesting. The other thing also is that there's China and US, and your exposure there is pretty much neck and neck, barring a few odd percentage points here or there. What makes you bullish on a comeback from China?
I think it will take quite some time for China to come back. Of course, this meeting that she had with Biden may help a little bit, but I don't think it will be really the turning point for the Chinese market. There's so many barriers and problems that the Chinese market is now facing, particularly the government in China putting more and more pressure on the private sector. So that is not a good sign for the market. So I would say to people, if they want exposure to China, go to Taiwan, because Taiwan, as I said, is has a big trading relationship with China, and you can get exposure to China that way.
Mark, you were alluding to the fact that AI, etc., is very critical when it comes to semiconductors. And given the exposure to tech as a whole, how important do you think it is to really leverage all of these new technologies and stay up to speed? A lot of new age tech companies seem to be doing that. And a lot of large cap IT companies as well are clearly investing and focusing on AI and these new developing technologies.
There's no question that AI is a game changer. Must remember, a lot of people think something magical about AI. It's not magical. It's about speed. What you're doing basically is speeding up computer power. And that's the reason why I mentioned semiconductors coming out of Taiwan and being so important, because those are the higher end semiconductors in the world. So with AI, you have a very, very fast calculation system, which enables you to make analyses that you, at the speed that you were not able to make previously.
Mark, one space which seems to be a consensus buy with at least the domestic institutional investors is the banking space. They believe that, given the underperformance, that's likely to do better, and the entire credit growth in the system, because of the entire capex and manufacturing theme you talked about, and even consumption, is likely to get a fillip. Are you looking at the financial space in India positively? Are you tracking any names closely?
Generally speaking, we don't like the banking sector. And the reason is that the transparency is not there. It's very, very difficult to understand what's happening behind the scenes, because you can't go into a bank and say, give me a list of all your lenders and your depositors with the amount of money you have lent and the amount of money you have coming in. This is just not available. They will give you the gross numbers, but you don't know which one of those lenders will be defaulting. So we found, generally speaking, that very difficult to go into the financial sector for that reason.
Sure. And within consumption, is there a basket that you like here in India? Autos, for instance, the consumer durable plays, or the entire luxury segment as well?
I think in the consumption area, food consumption, of course, is very, very critical in India. And as people get wealthier, which they're doing in India, they will move up the chain. They will begin to buy more sophisticated food products and services. So you're seeing the likes of Starbucks and other fast food organizations coming into India because they realize that Indians now have the money to consume these services. So I would say best to look at the higher end spectrum in the food sector, and particularly in those food sectors that are using technology for service, whether it be delivery, whether it be services within restaurants, etc.
I was just going to probe a little bit more about that, Mark, since you did talk about food. Outside of food as well, this whole upscaling, premiumization trend has been at play. I mean, whether it be real estate, whether it be shoes, whether it be clothing, cars, across the spectrum. Whereas rural India still is not really showing up the numbers. Outside of the food tech platforms that you just talked about, anything other than that within the entire premiumization or upscaling segment or theme that you like?
Well, you must remember the big trend taking place now in India is urbanization. In other words, although 70% of the population is in the rural areas, this will change dramatically over the next decades. more and more people are moving into the cities, there'll be fewer and fewer people in the farms. Farms will probably get larger and more efficient. So this is a trend, which means businesses will change dramatically. Then there'll be terrific opportunities in the transportation sector. There'll be great opportunities in the housing sector, etc. Now, of course, I'm not saying we will invest in those sectors, but I'm saying that those sectors that serve the transportation and housing sector could be very interesting to look at.
Mark, tactically, one can't wish away the big event. That's the election event, which is going to be a big overhang, I guess, on the sentiment of the equity markets. What should investors do around such a big thing like general elections, which are going to be in 2024 here in India?
I think it's pretty certain that Modi will be reelected. So most of investors, I believe, have assumed that to be the case, and it'll be business as usual. So the questions about the Indian election are probably not as complicated as the situation in the US, where it's a little bit more uncertain, let's put it that way. So I would say that it's business as usual and life will go on with Modi in charge.
But Mark, you've made the tough decision of stepping back from the Mobius Capital Partners. What are you going to do now? Spend your time by writing books, traveling around?
I have a whole list of new enterprises on the back burner. So there are a lot of things I'll be doing in the future that will be very, very interesting, I believe.
You will be back here in India. Sunday, we've got the World Cup final in Ahmedabad in Gujarat, and India's made it to the semi-finals.
Well, I'd love to come back for that. As I said, I've been to 6 cities around India in the last month, and it's been a fantastic experience. It really has been very impressive to see the incredible growth that you see here and the tremendous creativity that you see in India, which is very impressive.
Mark, but if I had to ask you, out of the decades of experience that you have, if you had to give the investors one sage advice, what would that be?
Study, study, study. Read, read, read. Learn as much as you can. Travel as much as you can. And open your eyes to the opportunities that you see around you. So it's very important to be open-minded and to continue to study.
So in your years of experience, learning, traveling, reading, Mark, anything that you wish you did differently?
I can't think of anything I wish to do differently. Maybe study a little bit more than I have, but other than that, it's been a great opportunity for me to be in emerging markets, and I continue to be very excited about it.
Okay, Mark, on that note, we let you go. Appreciate you joining us on the show, and all the best for all of those new ventures. We are waiting back to hear what they're about and what next for Mark Mobius. But thank you so much for making time and speaking with ET Now.
Thank you.
Okay, so